TV, a bit of breaking news for you. As I said, as we were talking to Annabel Denham there, we'll come back to Annabel in a second. Students have been kicked out from a block of luxury accommodation because the Home Office has taken it over for migrants. This is happening in a place in Huddersfield where there were 150 students living there, many of them coming back from last year to do their final year or to do their second year. They'd already got contracts, they'd already moved in, some of them, but it now turns out that at least 405 asylum seekers will be moved to the HD1 studio flats, which previously had been advertised as luxury student accommodation by a company called Prestige Student Living. 168 students, to be precise, had all signed tenancy agreements due to begin next month. Some carried over from the last year, but of course now the landlord has decided, or the company has decided, that they are no longer interested in renting to students, and instead they've sold out to the Home Office, who are probably paying an absolute through-the-nose amount of money to house all these people. 405 asylum seekers moved into student accommodation in Huddersfield. The people who did have the tenancy rights are now going to have to scramble around to try and find somewhere to live before they start university in the next couple of weeks. Annabel, I mean, it's really getting to the point now where people, when they see something like that, just get absolutely incensed. And, you know, I want to move off the subject, but it's very difficult to move away from it because it's such a big deal to a lot of people.
Well, of course it is. You know, it's a massive deal to people. And I think that there's a strong sense at the moment that it's not fair that there are certain people who are coming here illegally, and they are sort of leapfrogging those who are trying to get to Britain, perhaps to work, through legal means. Now, obviously, you know, I'm at pains to say that some of these people are genuine refugees, and Britain has a very long and proud history of welcoming asylum seekers, and we ought to continue to do so. But what we cannot have is a situation where economic migrants are crossing the channel in dinghies and they're being processed, or perhaps not being processed, or being given accommodation ahead of those who are trying to get to Britain through legal routes, and they're actually going through the proper processes and ensuring that perhaps they have a job here to come to, perhaps they meet the minimum qualification requirements, minimum salary requirements in order to do so. But as I say, you know, the system is just completely broken now. A big part of the problem is that the Home Office is simply not fit for purpose anymore. It was in 2006 that Labour's John Reid first used that expression, and here we are nearly 20 years later, and it seems to just be getting worse. What we need to do is split it into a ministry for immigration and a ministry for policing. And then on the immigration side, we need some kind of massive recruitment drive. There are civil servants who seem to float, I believe, between different departments. Why don't we pull them all onto into this area and have them clearing the asylum backlog and processing these people and sending those who do not have a legitimate claim to be an asylum seeker back to the countries from where they came. The government has clearly got to try and get something like the Rwanda plan off the ground. We'll know more about that in the next couple of months, and you know, with the Supreme Court's decision on that. Now, I think that the government fears that it is going to lose, in which case it's going to have to think of some other idea that perhaps will be thwarted by Parliament, perhaps will be thwarted by the courts. But all it can really keep doing is trying. And, you know, I do have a lot of sympathy with the Conservative government that it's hitting roadblocks everywhere it turns. You know, it's trying, I believe, you know, when it says it's trying to get tough, it's trying to tackle this problem, and it is just finding it almost impossible. It's simply too difficult to try and get those migration numbers down, whether it's legal or illegal. And I think, you know, to the public's frustration with this, part of the problem is that, of course, that we're having these increases in our population with seemingly no real investment in public services. If we are going to accept a constantly higher level of immigration, net migration figures, you know, perhaps 500,000 every year, then we're going to need to build more roads, we're going to need to build more hospitals, more schools, and there isn't really a sense that the government is doing that at all. So you can understand why people are feeling so exasperated by it.